Welcome to the Jessica Rector Show. I'm your host, Jessica Rector. If you're just tuning in, thank you for joining us today. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. My show is about empowering individuals to find who they are and not be defined by other people, roles, society, or things. Today we're talking about VDAY, which is the global movement to end domestic violence against women and girls. Think about that term, VDAY. You're going to remember that throughout this show and for the rest of your life. We're going to talk with my guest, Lori Thompson, here in a minute, but I want you to think about a few statistics. Think of all the women in your life, sisters, mothers, daughters, cousins, friends, co-workers. 1 out of every 6 American women will be the victim of an attempted or a completed rape. 1 out of every 6. That could be someone that you know. Every 2 minutes in America, a woman is sexually assaulted. That means someone's being sexually assaulted right now. By the end of this show, 15 women will be sexually assaulted. 15. That could be the person sitting next to you. That could be the person at home. Someone will be sexually assaulted. 15 women in this 30-minute period. Welcome my guest today, Lori Thompson. Thank you for joining me today, Lori.
Thank you, Jessica.
You are the organizer of VDAY here in Fort Worth, Texas.
One of the organizers. I'm the co-organizer. Lane Calabro knows all the coups.
Okay. One of the organizers.
Absolutely. One of the organizers.
Tell us a little bit about VDAY, the actual definition, and how VDAY began.
VDAY is, like you said, a global movement to end violence against women and girls. And Eve Ensler, who wrote the Vagina Monologues, traveled the world asking women poignant questions about their vaginas and realized that there was no context in which to speak about that.
I'm going to interrupt you. What made her decide to do that?
She had suffered from abuse as a child and realized the devastation and the impact it had on her in her life.
Okay.
And realized that talking about it made it better. So she decided to travel the world, and different women had different takes on their story. Some were tragic, some were hysterical, some were coming of life, some were reclaiming certain words that we don't say in this culture. And she had her 10-year anniversary last April in New Orleans. She reclaimed the Astrodome as the Super Love Inn. So I and about 5 women from Fort Worth rented a van and went to New Orleans, and we actually got to watch Eve Ensler open her own Vagina Monologues, which was amazing. Wow. And I think she said that there were 40,000 people that showed up to watch the monologues the second evening of a weekend festival. And in that campaign, she raised $700,000 just for the New Orleans. And what they did in New Orleans is she brought 1,500 women home.
That's
with
amazing. Resources
to make their lives better, to help them get a new start on life.
And what better way to start than that? Yeah, right. So tell us a little bit about what we're doing this year.
This year is a great year. It is spotlighting the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, and they have been at civil war for years. And unfortunately, in war, women and children are the biggest victims. 90% of war victims are women and children.
That's interesting because I think a lot of people think soldiers are.
Absolutely, but it's not true.
Tell us why it's not true.
Because it's the women and the children that are at the biggest risk. They don't have the military experience. They don't have the armament. They don't have that protection. Mm-hmm. And you can just look at the Iraq War and see how many missiles went astray, or that was the wrong house. Gee, they got mad at the opposing people and they bombed a school. And
right.
It really is 90% of women and children, and it's horrific. And in the Congo, they're not necessarily killing the women and children. They call it vaginal destruction. It's not only rape, but they use any instrument or anything they can find to penetrate the vagina. And at the end, the consequences are they destroy the women or the girl's vagina, which is actually the tube that leads up from the vulva, which is the outside of our body. People don't even know our body parts. But the vagina is the tube that goes up within our body. And when you put foreign objects up in there with force, day after day after day after day, man after man after man after man, you puncture it.
You can't help but to have
no, you can't. And there's
that kind of effect.
A professional term, and if I find it in my paperwork, I'll tell you. But these women go in and their vaginas have been destroyed and their bladders have been punctured and their kidneys have damage and they become incontinent. They're in incredibly horrific pain. And she just could not believe that this was happening yet again, because if we remember back in 1993, probably started in 91 or 92, war in Bosnia and Kosovo, where 60 to 80,000 women were systematically raped as a tactic of war, and no one did anything to stop it. We all knew it, especially the European countries that were all around knew it was going on, and no one did anything to stop it.
Why do you think no one did anything?
Rape horrifies people. It's the whole thing. If you see someone outside being raped, you're more likely to go in your house, close your windows, lock your door. You want to be a part of it. And I wrote letters, and I have a copy of the letter, and the reason why my congressional representative didn't think that we should do anything about it. And I think for me...
That's what the letter said?
Oh, it did. We couldn't sacrifice... This was 1993. Joe Barton, my favorite man. 1993, and I have a copy of the letter. And he said that we just couldn't sacrifice our men and women's lives. We really needed to work with our allies. And he didn't know if it was really for us or the European countries to settle that problem. The Iraq War happens, which does not right instantly involve rape. And all of a sudden, I guess, our men and women's lives aren't so valuable because he voted yes to send them over as quick as we could. I mean, it's very interesting how everything was opposite in that letter.
That's very interesting.
So no one did anything about those women, and I found a statistic a few years ago, 2/3 of the women that were raped in Bosnia and Kosovo are HIV positive.
Which that just brings up another issue.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back, Lori. VDAY Until the Violence Stops and Feminist.com collaborated for an anti-violence resource guide. Go to www.feminist.com/anti-violence. Only about half of domestic violence incidents are reported to police and about 37% of rapes. Welcome back to the show. If you're just joining us, we're talking with one of VDAY's organizers, Lori Thompson. Before we begin talking with her again, think of this statistic. 2/3 of every rape are committed by someone that the person knows. 2/3. That means someone you know could be raping someone else that you know. 2/3. And 5%, 1 in 20 men who rape will spend a day in jail. 19 out of 20 will walk away free. 19 out of 20. Lori, so before we went to break, you were talking about things that were happening in other places.
Right.
And specifically in the Congo.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit more about that.
What was lovely about going to New Orleans last year is Eve was already on this mission of the Congo, and she brought a doctor who's at the hospital that these women and girls come to, whose life's been changed because of that also, who's right there beside her. And through Eve and his work in the Congo, they got UNICEF to join with them, and they have a national tour, and it's called Turning Pain into Power. And the tour is in support of VDAY's joint campaign with UNICEF. Stop Raping Our Greatest Resource is the name, and it's power to the women and girls of the DRC. And I'll just read what she says because it's true. This exposes the devastating impact of rape on Congolese women's health, their families, and their communities, calling for specific measures to end impunity and perpetrators, economically and socially empowering women and girls to lead in the prevention of sexual violence and the rebuilding of the country that's devastated by this conflict. Building and opening the City of Joy in conjunction with the Panza Hospital, a center where survivors are provided with support to heal and training to further their development in leadership. So this man touched her life so much because of his empathy for these women and girls and his frustration of having to send them back, that she has really worked really hard with UNICEF, with ambassadors, with heads of states, with presidents of all different countries to make them understand that this is happening right now. And like in Kosovo and Bosnia, we can't turn a blind eye. We have to face this. We have to help empower these women and make this stop. Because when it happens in one country and people ignore it, then people assume that it can be ignored in other countries.
And that you almost accept it.
Absolutely.
That you're almost saying, no, it's okay. But she's also created the safe haven for these women so they don't have to go back to the place.
City of Joy.
They can go to this safe haven.
Yes.
And how many people can the safe haven hold at one time?
I think they have 200 beds.
Okay.
If I remember. And you can go to VDAY.org and watch videos of the groundbreaking of this incredible city. You can watch small interviews with some of the Congolese women. You can listen to Eve speak. You can visit with it or see what the doctor
Tons of
has to say.
resources
Oh,
there.
It's just fabulous.